up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. And this is not going to be boring at all. We have the host, all right, the professional podcaster himself of Power Athlete Radio, John. Is it Welbourne? I do not pronounce English very well. Portuguese is born and raised.
Yeah, it's Welbourne. It looks just like it sounds.
Okay, yeah. With me, it's I played offensive line too, right? Ton of hits to the head, so the ability to pronounce things is not easy. But for anybody that doesn't know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Name's John Welbourne. I live in Austin, Texas, but I'm really from California, like everybody else here from Texas. Grew up in Southern California, the youngest of three boys. Played football growing up. Got into martial arts when I was 6. Got into boxing when I thought kicking was stupid, and then obviously that moved into playing football, and it turned out I was a pretty decent football player and ended up getting a bunch of scholarship offers. Went to go play football at UC Berkeley, ended up graduating in 4 years, working on my master's in my 5th. At that time I got drafted to go play for the Philadelphia Eagles. Came in and started as a rookie and then was a starter for the next decade in the NFL. Played for the Eagles for 5 years, Kansas City Chiefs for 4, and then my 10th year for the New England Patriots, where I ended up getting hurt, and at that point, I retired, and once I retired, I was just kind of chilling on the couch. The game plan had always been to go to law school, which is what I had applied to do when I graduated from college, and I was doing my master's work. There was a scholarship for a 4-year letterman at Berkeley to go to the Berkeley Law School. So I had kind of been eyeing that and took LSATs and was getting ready to go, and then got drafted to go play in the NFL, and I figured I'd play for a year or two and go back and go to law school, which is kind of like my family business. My dad's a lawyer. My dad since passed away, but he was an attorney practicing attorney for 55 years. My brother's an attorney. My other brother went to law school but never practiced. And that was kind of my deal. And then I was sitting on the couch actually, filling out law school applications and trying to find another LSAT to take because it only lasts 5 years. Greg Glassman from CrossFit fame called me on the phone and asked me if I would help them develop their technology on how to train athletes. At which point I had never coached anybody. I had never really thought much about programming or any of this other stuff. I'd always been an athlete, and I just had amazing coaches around me, and I just showed up and did what they told me. I was analytical enough to ask questions and to kind of understand what we were doing. And I got a pretty good memory, especially if you say things over and over again, which, as you know, strength coaches and football coaches tend to repeat themselves. So then I become like an autistic parrot. So, having pretty much trained as a professional athlete since I was 14 years old, it was very easy to kind of port that over a little bit. And so when CrossFit hit me up, I said, sure, let me try. And 30 days later, we launched a website called CrossFit Football, which was a terrible name for the program. And I even told them that was a bad name. I was like, this sucks, dude. Like, this should be something else. And Glassman's like, no, you play football. People will get it. So we launched. The first day, we had like 17,000 hits. I got like hundreds of emails. People were curious about the program because it was the first time in history that CrossFit had actually like sanctioned somebody to design their own version of CrossFit.
Huh.
So at the time, there was CrossFit main page. And then there was all these SME providers like gymnastics and running and kettlebells and all these other kind of like pieces of CrossFit where they kind of found specialty matter experts to come teach elements of CrossFit. Huh. CrossFit Football was its own training program that was designed for field sport athletes, short, heavy, hard, fast, big, strong dudes, that was based off of CrossFit principles. So in essence, CrossFit actually licensed a program that was different than their methodology. It wasn't based on increased work capacity, broad time modal domains. It was pretty much heavy, hard, and fast. And all I did was I just put legitimate strength templates with short conditioning workouts, aka supersets. Like, I just translated like strength conditioning into like CrossFit terms. So then we got a ton of traffic, and we kind of virally destroyed CrossFit. Because at that point, there had been just one workout, and then I showed up, and I was like, no, you got to lift weights. And then you got to do some conditioning. It's called strength and conditioning. And every gym you walk into since that inception in 2009 now has multiple workouts in a day. The CrossFit Games have multiples in a day. So when you went into a CrossFit, you might just squat 5x5 that day.
Really?
Or you might just run 400 meters, or you just might do kettlebell swings, or you might do a WOD in this. Now people come in, they do, technique work, they do strength work, and then they do their conditioning, they do their WOD. So that didn't necessarily exist pre-CrossFit football. And I didn't necessarily think about it until Glassman got drunk and fell down face first in his soup as he was screaming at me that I virally destroyed CrossFit. So I think I just made it better. So yeah, that was kind of my forte and like my entrance into the world of strength conditioning. And from that time on, we launched the program, and we're getting a ton of traffic. And then about 30 days later, they asked me to teach a seminar, which I had no idea what to do. I'd never been to a strength seminar. So we put out feelers, and like, dude, all these people wanted us to come. And so I reached out to the guy that trained me when I was in the NFL, Rafael Ruiz, and like Kelly Starrett and Andy Stump and some of the people I was training with at the time. And I was like, I got to design a seminar. What do we do? So, well, we're going to teach them how to lift weights. We're going to teach them how to run, how to sprint, change direction, and pretty much like made like a ready-made 2-day strength conditioning seminar that really was just like a diagnostic for their training, and taught them some programming and a little bit of nutrition, and put them through some workouts, and just basically brought all like the sprint prep, A skips, B skips, all like the, dynamic warm-up stuff, taught them how to sprint using bands, banded resistance sprints, taught them how to lift weights, taught them about compensatory acceleration, and med balls and transverse plane and rotation and all the stuff that wasn't in CrossFit. And I taught hundreds of those. I mean, I traveled from like the Arctic Circle in Bodo, Norway, all the way down to New Zealand, all over the world for almost 9 years, teaching hundreds of people, or hundreds of seminars, and literally tens of thousands of people how to lift weights. So in a sense,
Quick break from the show to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out, and it helps you be notified when we have new content get released. So again, please hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this content. And with that, let's get back to the show.
I would show up on a Friday evening on a plane, teach all day Saturday, Sunday, get on a plane and fly home. And I had 40 to 50 new athletes every weekend. For my first year, I taught 36 seminars all over the world. So I had an opportunity to, like, any idea I had about, strength or conditioning or performance or this or whatever, I just basically dropped on the website. People did it. They gave me the results. And then I traveled and met all the people that did the program.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was like the world's biggest sea monkey experiment, like ant farm. And, it really, I always have subscribed to the SAID principle, specific adaptation to impose demands.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I set up the end game, and then started designing programs to get us down the road, and then got to go meet all the people and then put them through a 2-day strength diagnostic. And it was amazing to see the people that did our training were dramatically better than the people that did not do our training, because not everybody that did our training came to the seminar. People just randomly signed up, and I'd be like, great, what do you do? Oh, I do this, great. And we just took notes. And it really allowed me to kind of create the power athlete system that you see today. I created it in real time, literally like cut its teeth on the road, working with athletes, free programming. I mean, it's I don't think that anybody will ever be able to replicate it. And the people that have done something similar, like Kelly Starrett, Mike Bergner, Mark Riptoe, the guys that had those original kind of CrossFit days that got to teach hundreds of seminars, really had an amazing opportunity to work with so many athletes in real time so quickly that like the program just kind of clears away the rubble, and you can kind of understand the core aspects. There's really no theoretical. You're like, this works, this doesn't, this is where it fits, this is where it doesn't, this is what we've seen, this is how we've gotten people strong, this works, this doesn't. So a lot of what you see on the internet now with all this like online programming and this, it's all fucking, well, it's all conjecture.
It is. That's why I'm laughing.
It's conjecture. It's a dude in his basement, with a cool fucking handle, strength by science, science with strength, explosive plyos with strength and science, and all these fucking names. And like, it's like, okay, like I was watching a dude like dunk a basketball, and I'm like, okay, I'm not impressed by you dunking a basketball. Now, if you showed me like 50 kids dunking basketballs. So I don't know, man, it's turned into a lot of Wild Wild West and a lot of bullshit. And I think a lot of people that are out there pushing stuff out have never had the practical numbers to really ferret it out. And all they're doing is just kind of adapting and copying other people's stuff,
And that's something that you and, was his name John, that you had on episode 721? Who was the guest on your most recent one?
John. Dude, I've done 7. I like him so bad at these. 721 was that
talking
Joe?
about the business. Oh, Joe, the business of strength and conditioning.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, Joe Roggio.
Yeah, Joe, and when you had him on, talking about there is so much trash out there of like you said, people that have never done it. But for the coaches, like myself, that have either worked in college for a numerous amount of times, and if there are listeners, because we have coaches that are like, hey, how do I take this knowledge that I have of cutting my teeth working with athletes? Like, what is some more practical experience that you would explain to them? Because like you said, you just did it in real time. Now looking back, what would you tell them?
I don't know how to. I don't know how to replicate my experience for anybody, and I've had people ask me. I was like just the right person at the right time, and had the wherewithal to just I equate a lot of my success in life. Did you ever see the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey, where he just makes a conscious decision to say yes instead of
yes,
no?
Yeah.
That's pretty much, I think, like the recipe for a lot of my success. When people have pitched me ideas, I've been like, that sounds good, let's try it, let's see, yes. And whereas everybody else is looking, and my friend Andy Stumpf recently told me that he says no to everything. And it's only the things that keep coming back to him that he eventually gets worn down. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, you invite me to come on your podcast, happy to come on the podcast. And, if it works, it works. And I feel like if I had just said no and didn't do that, then none of this would have existed, and I would have probably gone off and been an attorney and been working with my brother in Orange County instead of, doing what we do here at Power Athlete, which is pretty fun. So, but I do think that the only way that you answer the questions that you have about strength conditioning and performance and all these other pieces, the only way you do it is actually in real time. You have to train athletes. I can sit at home and dream and conjecture and, watch Cal Dietz talk about triphasic and, look for fucking oscillation drills in here and argue about, the eccentric load remodeling tissue. But until you see this stuff in real time, or you have athletes to actually test things on, I think it's just all theoretics. And you can have a great Instagram handle name and you can come up with the best shit you want. But at the end of the day, it's always going to come down to who have you trained, who have you worked with, and have you seen the problems with this? And it's something that I continue to do. I mean, even though we have thousands of people that follow online training programs, I still continue to train athletes in person. I don't do it nearly as much, but if there's high-level professional athletes or people that need my help, I'm more than happy to work with those guys because it just allows me to sharpen my blade and answer more questions.
For those that are going through it, what is your overall 10,000-foot view of training program philosophy? Like when you get a new athlete, football player coming in, hey, off season, what are the first things that you're taking through a brand new athlete that you think are the most important KPIs for a football player, whether it be a specific position, or how do you go out breaking it down again, 10,000-foot view?
I just need somebody to move well. I don't get romance with movements. I'm really focused on movement. I need them to be able to step, squat, lunge, move X, Y, and Z axis, and basically seamless and effortlessly combine primal movement patterns through space to accomplish a known or novel task. What I do at Power Athlete is we foster and develop athleticism. So I don't necessarily need to know a ton about your sport. I just need you to be a more athletic version of yourself. I need you to be able to generate force. I need you to be able to jump and move and run and be able to change direction and make it look seamless and effortless. So where does that start? Basically starts in your trunk. I need you to be able to learn to arrange this, because if I can use this to connect this and this, it's a wasted deal. So we start where everybody does. Can you arrange your trunk? Can you learn task-specific tension? And from there, we build upon it. And at that point, there's really only 7 things that your body can do. In terms of an X, Y, and Z axis on the lower body, you can move in those different axes of rotation. So you can hinge, you can step, which is a Y, and then you can Z, like step up. It's really the combination of those 3 things with the lower body and the ability to seamlessly and effortlessly combine X, Y, and Z, which is what we know as athleticism. The upper body, vertical push, vertical pull, horizontal push, horizontal pull are the 4 upper body. So there's really only 7 movements that we can do, but yet we do them in 3 different planes of motion. So sagittal, frontal, and transverse. So really those endless amount of opportunities to do this. The training has to be representative, and they have to be able to move through full ranges of motion, while maintaining posture, position, and stability. So if you can move through those while maintaining, because I had a strange epiphany in the NFL. I got hurt my rookie year. I came in and started, got hurt, and ruptured my patellar tendon, so they stitched my knee up, and I couldn't really bend my knee for 3 months. So I just watched a ton of film, and I all of a sudden at hour 1,000 or something, I had this really interesting epiphany that the difference between wins and losses on the offensive and the defensive line was the guy that could maintain his technique longer won 100 out of 100 times, 99 out of 100 times.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you guys about our sponsor, TeamBuildr. If you have any online training platform needs, TeamBuildr is the go-to place. TeamBuildr has the ability to integrate with velocity-based training tools. They have the ability to program and have notes and videos for all of your athletes and your clients. This is your number one stop shop. Been using it since 2019 when I was working at Towson. So I've used it, love it. Make sure you check it out. Go ahead, click the link down in the description. And with that, let's get back to the show.
Right, so think about that. The ball snapped, I set back into position, and I have a technique. The defensive lineman's job is to get me out of position and to break my technique so then he can effectively beat me to the quarterback. As an offensive lineman, as I move through space, if I'm able to maintain posture, position, and technique through different factors like change of direction, movement, load, strength, all these other deal. As I set back in my technique, regardless, a guy crashes into me, I punch him, nothing changes in my technique. I don't step in the bucket, I don't do this. The longer I can maintain perfect technique under all these different circumstances, the greater a chance I have to win 100 out of 100 times. So when I looked at it, I thought, well, shit, I'm just going to maintain my technique longer than the other guy. So how do I do that? Well, I got to be really strong. Right? I got to be able to move really well. I have to be a master of my technique, and it has to be automatic so that I can basically have my body move through space and I don't have to think about it other than the fact. So now you get into that like conscious, unconscious competence where I'm so competent unconsciously, all I have to focus on is basically forcing that guy's technique out of position. Because he knows exactly what he needs to do. If he's coming into me and he gives me a shimmy club and I hit him and it knocks him onto his heels and he's into a bad position, well, he's already lost. And I maintained my technique longer than him. So it's a race to maintain technique the longest, right, through space, planning, change of direction, whatever it is, all these key factors. And I saw that and I was like, boom, done. All right, so when I go in the weight room, when I put weight on my back and my hands, wherever I'm going to lift weights, I know I need to move from point A to point B and then back to point A, right? Let's say I'm squatting. Let's use that example, right? I load a bar. I'm x-axis hinging, squatting down, coming up. My ability to maintain technique and movement from point A to point B and back under load with weight increasing, the longer I can maintain that with perfection, the greater chance that I have for success. So I took that same approach in lifting weights, all the drills, everything I did in my training, and then I just ported it over when I went out on the field. I'm like, I know what I'm supposed to do with technique. Great. I'm just going to be strong enough, violent enough, and efficient enough to maintain what I need to do on the field in the face of somebody who's forcing me outside that technique.
The combat sport background had to 100% help you with that, no? And is that the basis for your athletes too?
Yeah, I mean, boxing. Like cutting a dude off in the ring and like all like the boxing, basically fucking playing 2/3 inside out, first meaningful touch, being able to measure distance, mirroring a guy's feet, all that. I learned all that in the boxing ring.
And then how do you go ahead and translate, like taking that background to a brand new novice athlete? How are you able to then translate and get them to understand that and express that in that way as you're training them?
Well, they have to learn what good movement is first. Right? And then we have to learn to move well under load. And then there's a basic linear progression of this stuff. I mean, people, like I've always believed too that, young athlete, basic linear progression, the Mayo's Bowl approach is really good for beginning athletes. Right. You get to a point though where it stops and doesn't work, and then you got to get into more jiggy training. Understanding compensatory acceleration as mechanical advantage increases, so does speed. When I was probably 16 years old, when I was 14, I started training with this old power lifter and a guy named George Zangus, and he was good friends with Dr. Fred Hatfield. And he kept talking about this thing called compensatory acceleration, and finally I was like, what the fuck is this? I didn't say fuck. But he said, as mechanical advantage increases, imagine you're benching, right, and the bar's coming up, and as mechanical advantage increases, you have to continue to accelerate the bar. Yep. Right? So what happens is you activate white muscle fibers and speed and all these other things. But at the end of the day, what I want you to do is I want you to be so violent with the weights. I want you to lift weights with such violence that you're going to break the weights and that people will come over and tell you to slow down. And his joke was, don't lift weights like old people, have sex slow and careful. Be violent and try to break those motherfuckers. So when you watch me lift weights, I try to bend the bar as hard as I can, and I basically try to fucking break the bar, break the weights. And I've always lifted extremely violently. And that translated when all of a sudden I went out on the field and I went to punch my hands. I wasn't just trying to place my hands on guys. I was trying to put my hands 4 to 6 inches through them. I was trying to punch through guys. So a lot of times when you watch offensive linemen go out there, they just place their hands and they kind of punch and then they start doing this. No, I was imagining that my hands were like, steel balls, and I was trying to punch my hands not to their chest, but through their chest and have them come out the other side. So I would hit dudes so violently that people didn't want to necessarily play against me.
How did you handle that type of aggression and technique, but not overcommitting and reaching? Because, like you said, fighting in space, what if that defender was playing you? How did you balance those two, the yin and the yang?
I have a very unique skill set where I can somehow punch, uncoil my hips, hit, and then rebend. So when, we were watching film, I remember I was at the Eagles, and I remember my offensive line coach telling the young guys, you're going to watch John do shit that if you guys do it, you're going to lose and get cut. And he's like, I can play nose to nose with the guy, I can punch, I can uncoil my hips, and I can still bend and still play through space. It's just probably a certain level of athleticism, being able to move in space. So I just have a unique skill set.
Having the lawyer background, how did that help you with the private side of it, but then also being an actual coach and making sure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's?
I think the interesting thing about coaching, and this is why I don't prefer to coach when I say normal people, I'll just use that word like when I say civilians, because we work with a lot of tier 1 military guys. We do a bunch of stuff with Naval Special Warfare Development Group. So working with what I call tier 1 guys that are high level, this is what they do for a living. This is how they put food on the table. Professional athletes in the same realm. I like working with those guys because there's never a moment where you want it more than they do. When I owned a gym, a commercial gym, and we had people come in, I found that a lot of times I would get more excited by their progress than they would. And I found that I wanted the success and I wanted them to do better more than they wanted it. And when that realization happened, and the people just didn't care as much as I did, I knew it was time to go and not have that job anymore. So I kind of pulled back, and we worked a lot on power athlete, and I still train professional athletes and tier 1 guys and guys that are really hard chargers, door kickers, guys that go in harm's way, that type of stuff where it means something. That is the type of people I want to work with, just like the guy who's trying to get in shape for his wedding and then he hits his wedding and never works out again, or somebody that's just looking to tone. Even though I'm sure we have a ton of those people, I'm really not your guy, in person. And I get hit up by a lot of people to come and train with me. There's at least every time I go to JITS, I got some guy. It's like, hey man, I'd really like to come work out with you, and I'm like,
Do you really?
Yeah,
I don't think you would.
Yeah, no, I mean, not to say they wouldn't do well. It's just not what really wakes me up in the morning.
No, yeah, I mean, you're speaking to my soul with that, because on that same last episode when you were talking about, not wanting to start a gym just because people not putting things away, just getting over that, but balancing the fact that, how do you have a team of people around you too? How difficult was it for you to hire people and build your team out?
I've never been very good at that. I think the reason being is I was on Mark Ripto's podcast last week, and I had an interesting segment and some realization, doing a little soul searching about myself, and that I'm a process-driven person. Right, as an NFL player, you have to be process-driven.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to
line up, because if not, you're going to get cut.
Yeah. Or you're winning and losing with wins and losses in individual plays, right? So I'm going in, I'm going to play 70 plays. The guy next to me who I'm working with, he might get hurt and leave, and I got to bring in another person. So I have to have a process in place to be able to move with moving pieces, right? We have to be able, we could be up, we could be down, whatever, regardless of what happens, I saw, who was it? Miami hung 70 on.
Denver yesterday.
On Denver, right? Those guys are going to have. They probably were acting like they won the fucking Super Bowl. They are going to absolutely tank next week, right? Because they were too high, right? They did like they don't have the process in place to go in and beat somebody by 70. If the New England Patriots beat somebody by 70 points, they would have a process in place to go beat somebody the next week. The Miami Dolphins, I'll be very surprised if they go in and win, mark my words, just because they don't have the process, man. Like, they just haven't been there. And so with everything, that like process-driven deal, it means you're going to have bumps. It means that guys are, people are going to be inconsistent, like no bigs, no ups, downs. So I think as an employer, I'm in the process, and I probably suffer fools, and I allow people more leeway than I will or I should, opposed from somebody who's more outcome, where it's like, fuck you, you can't do the job, you got to go. Whereas I have this weird suspicion, and this is probably a fucking ego shortcoming of mine. I firmly believe that I can be the water to break the rock. Like, if somebody's a rock, I can be the water. All you got to do is just heat it up, cool, and give me an opportunity, and I'll break that rock. And you get to the point where it's like, shit, man, it's been 7 years, and your rock is fucking not worth breaking. Get the fuck out. So as long as I have somebody around me, like a Rogio, who's real good, like that's what I liked about the NFL, right? Like, there was a GM, there was a player personnel guy who was evaluating people, not out of emotion, ego, or anything, but can they do the job today? And if they can't, and that's their responsibility to give me the best parts to play with, right? So if the guy playing next to me isn't good, then bring in somebody else. But my process doesn't change, because it doesn't matter who they put next to me. But I'm trusting that they can remove those pieces. I just haven't done a good job of like getting into the front office. And I remember when I retired, I had some offers to like go and do some front office stuff, and I was like, man, I just don't know, like if I would have the like the cutthroat nature to, because I'm constantly trying to remove the rubble, trying to find the best, and like, okay, this guy's got this, he can do this, opposed from the guy's like, oh, fuck that guy, he can't play, get him out of here. I just don't know if I'd be good at that.
Is that why it works? It sounds like you're saying, hey, essentially kind of find, your niche and kind of still continue to operate within that. As you've continued to grow, is that why you're continuing to just stay on like the coaching side of it and not continue to aspire that way? Or do you want to eventually evolve and be able to do that?
We do. I mean, we do coaches education and that piece. We do a lot of programs which are more like A to B type of stuff, where we're actually coaching athletes through programs. We do an annual collective. We had about 51 of our coaches show up a couple weeks ago for, to kind of go through one of the new programs that I just put out, which was I got tasked to work with, if you guys are in the BJJ world, a guy named Victor Hugo from Six Blades. He's like the top ultra in the world. So Victor, his coach, Shanji Hibero, was pretty famous too in the BJJ world, reached out to me through a mutual friend and said, hey, I got a young athlete, if you could help him. So Victor came over, brought his 2 training partners, and he was having some serious back injuries, L4, L5 issues, and had never really lifted weights, had never done any traditional strength and conditioning, and was one of the top ultras in the world. And I was really fascinated by jiu-jitsu as a sport, because it's like a 360-degree kind of gyroscope.
Yep.
And when I think about athleticism and, more importantly, like training, I really picture in like standing, like imagine like a linebacker or a baseball player or a football player. Like, I imagine somebody in this kind of like standing, vertical, horizontal, or like vertical, position. And then I'm watching jiu-jitsu, and it's like, dude, these guys are like here, it's prime, it's supine, it's here, it's like 360 degrees. And I was like, man, I wonder if what I know of athleticism extends to something that's like a gyroscope. So I thought, man, this is a really interesting model, and an interesting sport. And what was fascinating is Victor is such a gifted jiu-jitsu player, like just so skilled, but yet lacked the basics of strength and conditioning. Like I'm talking about like high school basics, just because it's not part of their culture. So when he came in that first day, I was like, these are professional athletes? And I was like, you know what? This is fascinating to me. So I took those guys, and and what they've accomplished in the year is pretty much short of like amazing. We fixed Victor's back, and he's able to do a lot of things that he couldn't do before. And it's put him in a position where he went in a couple weeks ago, and he had a big super fight against Marigali, and Marigali ended up getting him on this little kind of sweep, and Victor should have stood up, and instead he rolled out and he stood on him, so he lost by 2 points. So I mean, but and what's kind of hard for me with jiu-jitsu is a dude rolling for 10 minutes who scores a 2-point advantage, and he stands up and starts beating his chest that he's the best in the world. Like, seems like fucking horseshit to me. Like, if you want to be the best, you got to submit the best. Like, I'm not winning shit on points, and I'd be embarrassed to say anything less. But, but then here's the deal. We're process driven. So this is just one piece in his process, and there'll be plenty more, but like, this is just a bump. We make corrections and we keep moving on. It's not like that's the end of it. So that piece has been really good. But yeah, working with those athletes and helping them develop. But I designed a custom program for them, or actually the custom program kind of like evolved for those guys, and it's called Dragon Slayer. So I brought in 50 of our coaches for a weekend, showed them the training, took them through the training, and then we did a Sunday JIT seminar with Victor and Shanji, and they basically took about 30 of the coaches through, kind of what, those guys, like what makes Six Blades and Shanji, and Victor the best in the world.
Yeah, I saw the Dragon Slayer. I thought that was a branch of the gear and the apparel, because I saw the rash guard. Yeah, like those are, those were really nice. Like, and the whole slaying your dragon, and it brought me to Jocko's book about, Mikey and the dragons, and like everybody's got a dragon to slay, and it's probably bigger in your head than is that what kind of the genesis of it? I'm getting off topic, but
no, it's my mom used to say, people only remember those people that slay big dragons. And I have fucking samurais and dragons fighting and slaying on the back, on tattoos on my body that I got 20 years ago. But where it really came from, too, it re-sparked, is during COVID, my wife sent me this quote that said, "Never apologize for raising dragon slayers in a time that they're real dragons."
Ooh.
And I loved, as much as I fucking hated lockdown and COVID, I really enjoyed it, because there was so much weirdness that came out of it. Like, you really got to see who the complete psychopaths were in the world. The people that were calling the police because people weren't wearing masks outside,
right.
Or the people that were at home just posting pictures of Mel Gibson and the Patriot running up over the hill, just these complete whack jobs, right? But it was a pretty good quote in that you have to raise your kids in such a way. I make no apologies for raising my kids, to be tough guys. I have daughters in this, but I teach them, the life, this world is not kind and gentle. And the parents that get their kids into trouble is the ones that try to erase the ugliness and create this utopian, oh, the world's a wonderful place. It's fucking not. Right? The world's full of bad people, and there's evil, and there's fucked up shit all around the corner. And if you don't do your job as a parent to prepare your children for the evils of the world, or at least let them know they're out there, then you failed them. And like I said, my dad passed away a couple years ago, and he was going through, he was fighting cancer. He got diagnosed with cancer right after Christmas. And then, he was stage 4. It was too far gone, and they put him into some shitty trial with chemo, which I regret. But he said he wanted to try it, and so we took him to a appointment, and it was really awful. And we dropped him off. We took him back to this little hospital thing that he was staying at, this outpatient deal that had 24-hour care. And my mom's like, "I don't want to go home. Let's go see a movie." So we went down the street. This is in Costa Mesa and Newport Beach, and there was we went into Triangle Square, and the only movie that was showing was Black Panther. So we just paid and walked in, sat down, and we'd sat down for 1 minute, and it was the scene where he's laying there, and they dig him, and he goes to the spirit world, and he pops up, and he sees a panther who turns into his dad, and his dad says to him, "The job of the father is to prepare the child for when the father is not there."
Yeah, amen.
And literally, I sat there and had this ghostly feeling. So we leave there, we go back, and I see my dad, and I was like, "Dad, he knew the end was near, and we were just kind of having some bucket list talks, and trying to talk about the good times." And he told me, he's as I'm laying here, I know that my fight on this thing's coming to an end, but he's I have a sense of peace and stillness, I'm okay with it, because I know that your brothers and you are like my older brother, went to law school, but he figured out he could make more money in insurance, fucking is major partner in a huge construction insurance firm. He fucking prints money. My other brother is like one of like the top like criminal defense attorneys in Orange County. Like I got to play in the NFL. I do this. I mean, we're all married. We got kids. Like my dad's like, you guys have all done really well. You'll take care of your mother. Like laying here knowing how well and how well you guys have done and like well adjusted, and he's like, like in a sense he almost echoed those same words, and he's like, I lay here not worrying about like who's going to take care of you like when I'm not here. I know that I'll be taken care of. There's like, so it was a kind of an interesting piece, and he ended up passing shortly thereafter. But as a parent, the feeling of like, have I done enough to prepare my children? Have I, have I done enough when my athletes come in? Have I done enough for them to when they stand up on the biggest stage in the world? And because I am, and this is so corny, I'm such a fan of humanity in such a weird way. I want to see the best in the world stand on the biggest stage, have their biggest moment, and either win or lose, either hold their hand up. But I want to see them compete on the biggest stage. And the thing I loved about the NFL is I got to every Sunday stand on the biggest stage of the world and one-on-one fist fight the best dudes in the world for 3 hours, and I got to know exactly how big, good or bad I was. And I try to prepare my athletes for that opportunity because I want them to stand up there and know that they have done everything possible to be successful. And if they haven't, then we'll figure it the fuck out.
Yeah, no, first of all, with the father thing, like, obviously it's happened and you've moved past it, but I mean, that's got to be tough, and good for you with that. My condolences to you. But
yeah, the hard thing about it is, like there isn't a single day that goes by I don't miss my dad. But like that's the deal, right? We're only here for a short time.
Yep.
So the impact that we have, like, I only have so much opportunity to impact my kids and those around me, because once I die, like, unless I'm fucking Marcus Aurelius or Seneca and write meditations and all these fucking epic, like, Stoic quotes that people love to quote very fucking esoteric on the internet and social media with, and have, and then force people to go back and read these things. It's like, for the most part, we'll all die twice. The day we die and when the last person we know forgets or passes away and our name is no longer. So to be able to do something that echoes in eternity, like I said, like, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, like I was a rhetoric major in college, so I was a classics major. And so, the Cynics, the Stoics and all that, Cicero were all really like a big focus for the first 3 years of my college career. And so it's funny now with like social media, people love to like, Google this shit, find a quote and then put it on social media as like some like deep esoteric thing. And you're just like, you're full of shit. You didn't even read that book. You just found a cool quote and you're posting it with your fucking bikini picture. But like that stuff is very impactful for me because I was young and impressionable. And, I read, Musashi's Book of Five Rings and like, like all of that really went back to help, formulating who I am, and more importantly, realizing that if I want to make the biggest splash possible, because if you think about like the impact we have on those around us ripples in time, I got to throw a big rock out there. And the way that I do it is obviously we do it with athletes, we do it with coaches, and hopefully provide, good information on podcasts that influences people. And people could listen to it and know that it's, for the most part, pretty honest and pretty straightforward. And I'm not trying to fucking sell you anything on a affiliate code.
So. Okay, so first question that I had. Oh, I'm going to save the second one. The first question that I have then is, based off of all of that, it seems like when somebody becomes one of your athletes, they get all of you then, in the same exact vein, because I'm assuming you want to see them succeed. Like, yeah. You probably want to see them succeed just as much. Like you talked about that before. Like, how do you handle that?
I don't have a lot of athletes. I don't have the ability to half-ass anything. So I'm like, kind of in for a penny, in for a pound. If like like I'm going on this journey. It's like my kids, same thing. Like my kids, I'm like, I'm not an absentee father. Like this journey that we're on, like we're going to be on this journey for a long time. And, like, this is my job, is to guide you. This is the position I'm in, and I try to give a lot. I realize that I personally only have so much time and the ability to give so much, so I'm very choosy with how I give my time. But I do things like podcasts and, programming and Discord and all the ways that I do to try to like give this information away and be able to provide people stuff. It was funny. I was on Rob Wolf's podcast recently, And, one of the things, when I retired from the NFL, I was in Dr. Amen's study. And part of the scans they did on the brain, the left part of my brain was kind of damaged. So it was left frontal lobe, basically didn't light up, deals with sympathy and empathy, and they basically said, hey, I had brain damage. So it put me on like a 10, 12-year fact-finding deal of how do I fix this? If the part of me that deals with sympathy and empathy, which is ironic because I got them to write me a doctor's note for my wife and my mom that basically said, I'm fucking brain damaged, I'm an insensitive asshole. But a big part of this was okay, well, you know what? I need to fix this. Your brain should be malleable. I should be able to fix this. So it took me a number of years, but I went and got rescanned, and all the damage that was done to my brain is untraceable, completely gone, no more issues. And I've been really proactive. And so Rob, it was pretty neat. I recently, there's a deal called Neurowave, and there's a machine called Sonal. It's kind of like a helmet with magnets that they use for people with PTSD and depression and stuff. So the guy that does all the testing, Dr. Eric Wan, was on the podcast, and I had just through another random deal been tested by them 10 years ago, and then 10 years later I got tested by them through Nick Hardwick. These guys came and presented South by Southwest. I'm listening to it, and I'm wait a minute, I've heard this before. Fast forward 10 years later, they scanned me, and my brain is completely improved. It's it de-aged, it got sharper, it got this, and so I started going through, and as I sent the information to Rob, because I remember when I first got diagnosed, I reached out to Rob, so I 12 years later, reached back out to him hey, dude, I fixed this. So he gets me on the podcast, and I went through all of the things that I did. Starting with a ketogenic diet, and then it was micronutrient testing and hyperbarics, and then went a pretty aggressive hyperbaric protocol, which was 40 sessions, 5 times a week for 8 weeks. There was a supplement strategy associated with it that we had basically I'd pulled from other stuff. I mean, there was so much stuff. I noticed a big improvement with exosomes. I mean, there was meditation, learning, just fucking a decade of stuff, and I outlined it on the podcast. And then when I was recently on Rip's podcast, I had mentioned, we got into a little bit of it, and I got all these emails from people that were can you send me that protocol? And I'm just dude, go listen to the podcast. Or you know what? Right there. Or just book a consult. I'm happy to talk to you, but I've given a lot away, and I'm happy to give more away. But at the end of the day, the secrets of the internet are at your fingers if you're willing to reach out and fucking grasp it. And I think that's a big issue. If you want to be a better athlete, you want to be a better coach, you want to be a better father, all of those things are out there. You just have to sift through it and figure out what works for you as an individual. Not to say that the way that I did it is the right way for everybody, but here's the protocol that I used, and it took a number of years, and it was a lot of testing and retesting. But I really think that anybody laying at home and being oh, my brain is squished, poor me, it's fucking bullshit. And I have friends like that, and you know what they do? They sit around and smoke weed all day.
Oh, fuck that.
And they somehow think that basically hitting themselves square in the head with a ball-peen hammer every day smoking weed is somehow going to fix their brain. It doesn't. Your brain is a muscle, it needs to be exercised. Just basically sedating it with cannabis. And I'm fine. Believe me, I'm a much bigger fan of cannabis than I am of prescription pills and all that other stuff. But I also am not fooled enough to think that cannabis is somehow going to fix my brain and make me not a potted houseplant.
Yeah. And so the reason I'm super interested in this because I've recently started doing some brain training myself. And you said the left side, and I have apparently left side cerebellum not functioning as well. So I was like, I played right side. I wonder if he played right side.
I played left, but I always played against a 3 technique. So I was constantly hitting this way. And then when I went to go play right tackle, I was always reaching and putting on the left side of my head. So I think left guard, right tackle was the perfect storm for the left side of my head.
Yeah, same for me. I played right tackle, and like you said, I'm either coming down and helping block a 3 tech, or I'm reaching, or I'm getting a Mike linebacker, right? And same exact process. The guy who's actually, his episode's getting released this week, he's a chiropractor. He's my father-in-law's chiropractor, and he and his brother and the whole family, it's they're super driven by the neural process and the brain and functioning with the brain. And, we're doing these, he's got me standing on my left leg, brushing my teeth with my left hand, right, to get that going. Or focusing out of the right corner of the eye, doing activities with the left arm. And it's just... as I continue to do these things, I guess I'm just kind of doubling down on what you said. It is super, super it is malleable, and I'm interested in that because how can you continue to push the envelope of human performance, right? Rather than just like not even just said
Well,
smoking weed and getting drunk. Like how can you make
yeah.
that better?
The biggest thing is that the pain receptors in the gut are the same that are in the brain.
That's
And
the
you've obviously heard of leaky gut.
yes,
People that have leaky gut have leaky brain. The lining. I mean, there's a physiological neurological connection between the brain and the gut. If you heal the gut, you heal the brain. And so you got to remove a lot of the issues that are basically killing the gut. And that was where I started. Did a bunch of food allergy tests, figured out what foods I was allergic to, which ones I wasn't. And I did a pretty aggressive ketogenic diet where I don't think I ate a carb for a year. I came out the other side of that. It was pretty awful. Felt better. But I do a lot of micronutrient testing. So making sure that that's a big piece for me is making sure micronutrients are on point. And I just eat a diet that basically fits within, like if I'm allergic to those foods, I don't eat them. Like I'm always allergic to gluten, soy, and what is it? It's gluten, soy, and one other one. I can't remember the other one. But so for me, gluten-free diet, I don't eat any soy. And for the most part, I just, and I don't try to self-medicate with alcohol. That's another big one. I think that was a big thing we saw out of COVID.
Yep.
It's 9 a.m., let's have a drink. And I'm like, Jesus, these people basically fucking self-medicated themselves through COVID. And then the other one too is, being present. It's so easy to just waste time scrolling, but reading, doing different things that are thought-provoking. I find that, so this goes back, how am I, 47? This goes back over 30 years ago. I was 17 years old. I took a recruiting trip to UC Berkeley, and I told them I was interested in being a lawyer, and they allowed me to go into the law school. And I had a one-on-one meeting with this guy named Adrian Cragen, who was the dean of the law school in the 60s, right? Real old dude. I think he was in his 80s at the time. Came to find out that he was friends with the attorney that apprenticed my dad, right? Totally random. They were both Hollywood attorneys. So this guy was a tax attorney. The other guy that my dad's apprentice was a criminal defense. And he made a really interesting statement that stuck with me for over 30 years, which is if you want to learn to think, you have to learn to read and write first. He said, only fools speak before they learn to read and write. And he goes, you have to learn to think. So he's like, read and write, and then that's how you learn to think. That's the process. So I think about, I like to read, and I like to write. And reading and writing allows me to formulate my thinking so that I can come and speak intelligently. This does not exist without reading and writing. And what I feel, a lot of what I hear on the internet is just people being influenced by other people's talking and them not really thinking through the process. That's like when you hear people and it just sounds insane. I hear shit that people say on the internet, or I'll hear people be interviewed or podcasts and this, and I'm just they might be rich, right? Which I don't necessarily know if the value of in today's world, the richer you are, the more you have it figured out. I don't think that's the case. No. I think you're just good at, basically making money.
Yep.
But I hear these people and they sound fucking insane. And I hear this all the time, and I just think shit, man, these people have a high level of psychosis and they're insane. But more importantly, they don't read, they don't write, and they don't think. And it's very vapid to me. So what I ask all of my athletes and all the people around me is what are you reading? Can we have intelligent discussions on this? And if I can't have intelligent discussions with people because they're not reading, they're not writing, they're not putting their thoughts on paper, they're not working through things, I find that it just dwindles. And at that point, you have to surround yourself with people that are going to force you and push you on, if these are the core ideals I have within Power Athlete, what I've done is I've effectively, brought in hundreds of coaches, worked with tens of thousands of athletes, pushed this methodology out for years. And what I'm always searching for is pushback, how people are using it, this and this. And I think you get to the end where you're this thing's been battle tested enough to know where, I think we figured it out pretty well. On the podcast, it's pretty interesting in that, you listen, you hear the information. And if there's people that want to push back or they want to give me, contrarian ideas, I'm up for it. I'm up to argue on anything. Have I thought through everything? No, but I like to take Jordan Peterson's approach, which I love on Jordan Peterson, because if Jordan Peterson gets posed with a question that he doesn't necessarily, like, hasn't thought enough about, he's like, I haven't thought enough about this. I don't want to answer it poorly, which I think is an incredible thing, because people don't do that anymore.
No.
Right? You ask a question, I don't know, what do they do? They start fucking talking, and then you're like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. So I like Jordan Peterson's approach. If you were to ask me a question, I don't know, something about, I don't know, like inverse relationship of debt to national GDP, I'd be like, I don't know. I haven't looked at that since I was in college. Like, I'm not going to be like, well, production's down in the United States. But that's what people do, because if you admit you don't know something, then you're not an expert, right?
Oh, God.
And then the other part, too, is you get like the weird experts on like manliness. That's like my personal favorite.
Oh.
That's like my hustle porn deal.
Oh,
like,
please, yeah.
The, who is it? The Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate. Yeah.
Where like you're doing a shirtless, sunglasses, smoking cigars, and talking about what a man is. It's fucking painful, dude.
It is.
It's painful. Like and like the mark of, and you know what, like 16-year-old boys eat it up because they think of a Bugatti and a cigar and this, and it's so bad. We're so in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, 100% agreed. And with all of that out there, okay, and you talked about the health and the genetic testing and the things within the podcast. How did you filter through all those things for people that want to get things in line, but like because there is so much of it out there and they don't know who to trust? Like, how did you stumble upon what you did to be able to speak so convictionally about it?
I think you have to create a circle of people that you trust, and then you bounce things off. So I don't really think I'm all that smart. I just have really intelligent friends that I've done enough for. When I ask their opinion on things, they'll be like, I don't know, but let's research it, or like, what do you think about this and this? And I think as long as you have intelligent people around you that can give you a little bit of like, do you remember the movie Hunt for Red October?
I've heard of it. I never watched it.
So it's an incredible movie with Sean Connery. But in there, they were like trying to communicate with the Russian sub, but they had no way of communicating. So they did this thing called pinging, where they like sent out like a sonic thing, and it bounces off of like the metal sub. So how long the ping goes is how they measure distance. So that's called active pinging. And so he's like, one ping. So he shoots one ping, and then it kind of rings the deal, and it's like, okay, that was yes. One ping was yes. Two was no, right? But I think, like, for the most part, like, you got to be, like, actively pinging. And Rob Wolf always says that. He's like, I pinged so-and-so. And I just think about the Hunt for Red October, that you reach out, you kind of, like, push information out, and, like, you're kind of measuring distance to see whether or not it makes sense. And I think as long as you have a good Rolodex of people that'll shoot you straight, and then you have to be analytical enough to, like, hear what people are talking about, see if that makes sense, kind of do your research, and then decide, am I willing to invest in trying this? And then what's my marker for improvement? I don't think that people in life are really just anything. Sit down and say, what do I want out of this? It's like an investment, right? Okay, I'm going to invest in this. What's my perceived outcome? What would be my version of success? What would be my version of like, okay, this was a win, this was a loss? And things I didn't necessarily notice an effect. But you know what? Some other things that I did that I didn't think would have major implications ended up having huge implications. So I think having some like measurable and repeatable markers for success, I think, is always, KPIs. You talked about it. What's the KPIs that are going to show me that whether or not what I did was successful or not.
With the micronutrient stuff, how, like, getting into the nitty gritty for any of our listeners out there that are continuing to try to, learn about it for themselves or their athletes, like, what were some of the big, again, 10,000 foot view rocks that you notice, like, hey, okay, me, and then are you doing this with your athletes that you're recommending? Like, how do you go about that?
There's Tom Incledon in Arizona is a guy named, he has a company called Causenta, and they do this really extensive panel. I forget the company that does it. But yeah, they do all the micronutrient testing. And what's fascinating on the micronutrient stuff is like, you go through and let's say you're low on something and then I supplement and I'm still low. Why am I low? A lot of that stuff comes from low level inflammation that ends up binding receptor sites. And a lot of times nutrients aren't absorbing, not because they're not present in the system, just because your body isn't healthy enough to absorb them. So being able to, understand that your body needs zinc, magnesium, iron, selenium to basically produce testosterone. People are like, oh, I'm low in T. So what do? They supplement them with testosterone, while understanding that they might not have the building blocks they need. Same thing with the brain. I really believe that a lot of the brain stuff we're running into, it's coming back from micronutrient deficiencies. The food that we eat, and there's people that are going to argue this, but historically, right, like somebody sent me something Lane Norton posted where he said this wasn't true, and it is. And I know this because of Doc Inclinon. But the food we eat today is about 1/10 as nutrient dense as it was 100 years ago.
Jesus.
So, like if I'm eating like, a steak, for example, and I'm supposed to be, reaping all these nutrients out of it, and it's not as nutrient dense as it was 10 years ago, then I'm going to have to supplement. Or if I'm eating vegetables, or if I'm eating fruit, or I'm eating all these different things, because I'm trying to eat this kind of diet that's rich in micronutrients, there's a good chance that I'm still going to be micronutrient deficient because the food is not as nutrient dense as it was 100 years ago. So for our evolution, we evolved in a very interesting way with probably very nutrient dense food that just doesn't exist today.
You think that's why people are starting to try to hunt more and grow their own stuff? Like, there's a trend.
Yeah, no, well, I think that regenerative kind of like, like harvesting, I think that's just fucking cool. Like,
100%.
Yeah, I like fucking awesome. Like, I just saw, Andy Stump and his wife, like, went on this bitch in elk hunt, and they basically, took an elk, and they bring it back, and fucking amazing. Elk steaks are great. Like, I am so, like, if you want to have a garden and grow your own fruits and vegetables and do that, I love it. Do it. But just know that the nutrient density of the food that you buy at the grocery store is not what it was 100 years ago. So are people doing it? No, I just think they're doing it because it's fucking cool and it's the right thing to do. It makes for good Instagram content, and it's a way better fucking story than I just went and bought steaks at Whole Foods. But just know that the nutrient density of the food we eat is not what it was 100 years ago. So if you want to basically live with how, the evolution thing's really fascinating. You have to understand a little bit of evolutionary biology to really like kind of put this stuff. And anybody that says that's bullshit is fucking a quack. Art Devaney's evolutionary biology that I read, over 15 years ago, 16 years ago, maybe 17 years ago, is still one of the most impactful things I've ever read. Right? Like lift weights, move through space, sunlight. It's really like if you guys Google it, Art Devaney's evolutionary fitness, like that shit's still the blueprint for this stuff. Eat a good diet, sleep, wake up when the sun rises, go, start tuning it down when the sun goes down. Eat a high protein diet, lift some weights, run, like to be able to do all these things, get outside, this is how we've evolved for the last, X amount of years, however long. It's pretty fascinating too, because if you look at like evolution, there's so much conflicting information on human evolution, because there was like Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
Like, there's all these different versions of us, but it's pretty interesting that like if you look at it, like there was Neanderthals and this, and then they all just disappeared, and there's us. So like I'm always really fascinated on that. Like was it like the ultimate game of Survivor, or like, it's pretty wild. I really got into Zecharia Sitchin's books. I don't know if you've ever read any of those, but he was the guy that went and translated all the ancient Sumerian texts and all their crazy ass stories, and he wrote them in these books. And I just got done with the first book called The 12th Planet, and it's pretty wild. But not that I'm looking for aliens to come down from space, but I think there's some really fascinating things within the world and with us that we just don't know answers to. But I think in terms of how to make people bigger and stronger and faster and make better athletes, I think we're pretty good. There's a lot of, if you kind of like take a 10,000 foot macro view of like everything everybody's saying, it's all about the same, right? Like if you want to build, if you want to build muscle, you got to train somewhere to failure. If you want to carry a lot of muscle and be jacked, you got to eat a high protein diet. If you want to, like not age your brain like it's in dog years, you're going to have to sleep. Like sunlight's important. What else? Lifting heavy weights is important to recruit motor units. You want to have mitochondrial density, have a big aerobic base, for longevity. All these things are key factors, and regardless of how people want to argue them, they're pretty undistinguishable. Pretty hard to argue in that way.
Has there been a major aha moment in the last couple of years of training, like, hey, I didn't do enough of this back in the day, I'm doing more of it now, or something that was added?
Yeah, the aerobic base stuff. I didn't give any credence to it. I just thought I was going to sprint and run as fast as I can, and sprinting was better, which it is. And then it wasn't until probably about 10 years ago we were doing. We always do little stupid challenges, like little bets. And one of them was I had to lose 10% of my body weight. We did a bod pod, and the guys were doing like gain 10%. We did all this kind of stuff. And I was stuck, and I couldn't, I was like cutting calories. It wasn't working. So I put like a bunch of aerobic work in. I just was doing like 45 minutes, 7 days a week of like riding the bike or walking or stair mill, just straight up zone 1, zone 2 stuff. And then all of a sudden I like PR'd every lift. I was like in caloric deficit. I was down 15, almost 20 pounds, 30 pounds. So I was like 265. And I was like, all of a sudden I pulled like, we did deadlift and we did a max rep set, and I think I pulled like 585 for 8, which I had never pulled 585 for 8, especially in like caloric deficit, under eating. Wow. And like PR'd all these lifts, and I was like the leanest. I was like under 10% body fat. I think at the time I measured, I was like 7.8, and I was like 268 pounds, 267 pounds. PR'd every lift, and I was like, shit. I fucked up that. And so at that point I really started leaning, and I went back and looked at all this like kind of research for mitochondrial density and that, and that was a real big piece for me. So that was kind of when I fucked up. I wish I had added that in when I was playing the NFL. But I think having a big aerobic base is helpful. I think you got to lift heavy weights. If you're injured, I think using some blood flow restriction training, use some EMS devices to recruit motor units is important. And I think that you have to have some element of competition, do something that forces you to be athletic. When I started working with the BJJ guys, I started doing BJJ again, or not again, but I started. I had always done boxing, but I kind of hurt my shoulder, so then I had shoulder surgery. I stopped boxing, and I kind of got stuck, and I didn't necessarily know where I was going to go, and I was supposed to box with some of the guys, but they're like 45 minutes away, which makes it fucking time prohibitive. Then these BJJ guys approach me. I start working with them. I start going training with like some of the best dudes in the world, and it was good for me just to be around younger dudes, and have these guys have such a good skill set. It was incredible for me to be a beginner again, empty my cup, and just be okay with sucking, and be humble enough to be like, shit, man, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm fine with that. So I really enjoy the process of not being good at something, and like going from like I don't know what I'm doing to like moving on that journey is like really appealing for me. And I've done it with everything. Like I learned to weld and fabricate and build stuff and do dirt work and just like all the shit I do around here on my ranch. I just learned all that, and it's just because I'm okay with not sucking at things, and I'm okay with fail.
Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with failing and asking for help and getting better, and I think that's part of life.
Did you go about it with the same mindset that you had in the last episode that I listened to, where you would just, you talked about guys at JITS, they would show up, train hard for 14 days, be gone, versus just showing up, 2 days a week because you're like, hey, I do 2 days a week. If I get the third, the fourth, did you start off and just go and binge it and then go to the 2 to 3, or like what's your learning process?
No, I always like to build steam. So everybody does this, and then they do this. What I do is I kind of do this slow ramp. I was like, let me get to 2 days, and when I can handle 2 days, I'll add a third day and a fourth day, and then I'll kind of adding this. So I've been at it a year. I've been pretty consistent, and I'm frustrated that I'm not better, so I'll add a third day. And so now I've been going on Fridays, and I like some of the open mat stuff, so I've been trying to go to more like rolling rounds. Like I think the technique stuff is good, but it's kind of like practice. Like the walkthroughs are fine, but at some point you got to go live bullets.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that piece, but also what kind of screws me a little bit is I invest, 6-7 hours a week with my guys, which is 6 or 7 hours a week of my spare time that I would be doing other things with. But I've realized that like it's important. I've invested that time in those individuals for them to do well, and their job is to like, go out and fucking be the best in the world.
Do you think that you started doing the jiu-jitsu before because that's who you were coaching more, or do you
Yeah.
think it would have been a little bit different? Okay.
No, I would have never have done it. I think it's the dumbest thing ever, laying on your back and having wrestling with a bunch of other middle-aged men in pajamas. I think it's the dumbest thing ever. I would have never have done it. I would have never have done it if these guys hadn't approached me. I just thought it was disingenuous that these guys are coming to train with me and learning what I do, but I know nothing of what they do. So it was just about humbling myself. If I didn't have that piece, I would not have humbled myself.
That speaks to my soul because I did kickboxing for 2.5 years with a friend of mine who ran a gym, and very similar in terms of if you're going to if you're going to program for them, you want to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Within that vein, for your athletes, because you've had the broad spectrum of them, what ones would you recommend coaches and athletes to do, and why?
What do you mean?
If they're going to be a competitor in it or a discipline to learn for the benefit of all the different things of being athletic, like what of the combat sports would you recommend for people to do for their own benefit?
I think everybody should learn to box and use their hands. I think jiu-jitsu is great too. I mean, I love the wrestling. I love the jiu-jitsu. I think it's really fascinating from like an athletic problem solving. So one of the interesting pieces, and I think this is maybe something that's lost today, and I hope it's not, is athletic problem solving. Like you're put like a fence is put in front of you. How do you scale the fence? How do you climb a tree? How do you like solve these problems in space in real time in an athletic way? And I like jiu-jitsu for the fact that another person, open chain, open loop, comes to you, and you have to figure out a set of like skills to basically have an intended outcome, but it's all part of a process. So I think for like neurological, staying young, for like problem solving, it's like physical chess. And I really think like that. Boxing, that's why they call it the sweet science, same thing. Being able to like, use your body in space, being able to move in relationship. And I think that stuff is so vital. And we'd probably be a lot farther along in society if people did more of it. So I think that piece is huge. The one thing that does bug the fuck out of me about jiu-jitsu isn't necessarily the jiu-jitsu, it's how obsessed people are with belts and stripes.
Ooh.
Like there's somehow like I never show up to promotion day, and I literally like won't show up. So I just ditch promotions. I don't want stripes. I don't want belts. I like told Shanji, I'm like, the only belt I want is a black one. So if you want to give me other belts, I'll wear them, but I don't care if you ever give me another belt. I don't care for a stripe. I'm fine to be a no stripe white belt and stand last in line. Like give other people, like other people need that shit. I'm not showing up for you to like give me something as a way to move me along this like pay scale. Like that's not any problem. Like that's like, it doesn't do anything for me. Like it's not like, oh my God, I'm training till I get a blue belt. I don't give a fuck. I don't care what color your belt is. Right? I don't care if it's a black belt or a green belt. I don't care what it is. I'm just going to try to go out and smash everybody equally. Right? Like I have zero, like, and people go like, oh, that guy's black. I don't give a fuck that guy's a black belt. I don't care if that guy's a brown belt. I don't care if that guy's a white belt. Some of the toughest rolls I had, I was in Montana and went to go roll with Rob Wolf, and a dude that was a no stripe white belt. He's like, hey, we tapped it up. The dude was on me so fast, and like I could tell within a minute he was a high school or college wrestler. The dude was on me, like literally closing distance. I was all of a sudden had to have this metal thing that was like, make frames, do this, and I ended up fucking getting the dude. But I was like, he's like, oh yeah, no, I was an all-state wrestler in high school, and the guy was like a power line worker, lineman. I mean, dude was super strong, and I was like, dude, that dude almost fucking killed me. And he didn't have any stripes on his belt. My buddy Matt was a D1 wrestler for Cornell. He's like, I wrestled, Division I, Power 5 school, and he's like, we never wore belts. So I don't know, like I understand the need for it, but like people are super obsessed. We're like, oh my God, I got my first stripe, or I got this. I don't know. I think you worry too much about fucking some external validation of where you stand in line or perceived placing in this world. So that's not I don't really care about that piece.
As you talked about the sleep, how did you go about your sleep journey to continue to make it more improved, and what would be some advice that you'd tell coaches to help their athletes?
I think you have to monitor your sleep. I really didn't put a ton of credence in that, but I really think monitoring your sleep, finding some form of sleep tracking is helpful. And the biggest reason this isn't necessarily to like tell you HRV or quality, but I think it's making sure you're in bed at a set time and getting up at a set time, and then being able to measure how you know whether or not your sleep is restful, what you're doing. You know, if it's the room's too hot, if there's too much technology, if you know, light. I mean, just start removing all these variables and really look forward as like sleep is like your superpower. This is how you recharge your battery. And if it's not beneficial and you're not doing well, then you're going to fucking age quick and you're not going to be able to perform at a high level. So really, I'm very selfish and I safeguard my sleep.
Has there been any aha moment, like, because the athletes that you work with, majority of them, professional, college, what's the population demographic mainly?
I work with professionals in person. The majority of people we work with are probably anywhere from 18 to 56, 50, year old, mostly men, but, people that are either high level, college, high school athletes, or dudes that are doing some form of training after life. We got masters track guys that do jits. We got a ton of military guys. I mean, a lot of guys that do stuff. And then there's a lot of dudes that just bang weights in their gym or in their garage because they want to have a good program.
No, the reason that I was asking is just because, again, that variable of, hey, if you're a college athlete, college strength coaches, are a main demographic of trying to continue to handle that, hey, you have to truly be not Joe College or Jane College if you want to get those results, right? And it's like, if you can, I never put the full onus into how important actually sleeping in a cold bed is. I was like, somebody recommended it. Like,
no, it's there, dude. You got to do it. So yeah, I'm easy to find. Just at John Welbourne, Welbourn, and Power Athlete. If you put me into Google, I'm easy to find. I'm easy to find on social.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for talking with us. I really like-minded people, so just love learning from you. So thank you very much for the time today.
Awesome, dude. Look forward to it. Thank you. See you.
See you.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.